What's up everyone, Soldier First Class here. In today's mission, we'll be discussing the history of Final Fantasy villains and how most seem to carry a god complex. Keep in mind there will be massive spoilers for most of the games in the numbered entries in the franchise. A god complex is defined as someone who has an overinflation of self-worth, who believes they are above others, much like that of a godlike figure. Final Fantasy has based an entire series on god complexes, and has done it well for several years. To get a good look at the roots of these villains, we must first start with Garland and Kaos from the original Final Fantasy. Releasing in Japan in 1987, the original Final Fantasy had the first villain in the series with a god complex, but he didn't always start out that way. Garland was once a respected and high-ranking knight in the Cornelia Kingdom. According to the 20th anniversary Ultimecia, Garland was rejected by Princess Sarah, and this caused him to turn against his kingdom. This information gives him a little bit more humanity, and that always makes a villain much better. A fall from grace story is usually one that resonates with fans, and giving a villain that trait makes them all the more memorable. The Warriors of Light defeat him in his lair, but much like any good villain, he refuses to die. Using the 4 Fiends of Chaos, he creates a time loop that makes him immortal. Shocker, I know, a story in the 80s dealing with time travel. When the party travels back to the past, they discover Garland is very much alive, and when confronted, becomes the god Chaos. Due to his immortality and rage, Garland develops a god complex, believing he is above the Warriors of Light. We then see Chaos in the Dissidia series as the leader of the villain side of the conflict. Garland and Kaos set the tone for the rest of the series, and we see it in almost every villain in the franchise. Fast forward to Final Fantasy II and the Emperor of Ultimecia. His goal is to rule the world and everything in it. However, he's more than just a vicious ruler, he's also a master strategist and weapons engineer. He rarely fights unless necessary, instead choosing to have his minions fight for him. Much like Garland, the Emperor doesn't let death stop him. After dying at the hands of the party, the Emperor descends into hell. Upon his arrival, he defeats the devil himself, and becomes the next embodiment of evil, taking on a new demonic form. It's theorized that this was his plan all along, allowing himself to be killed to take the devil's power for himself. As a master strategist, this would make sense, and would follow up with his characteristics of being cunning and calculated. Later, when the Dawn of Souls remasters arrived, the Emperor would make his return, this time ruling over both heaven and hell. After his defeat, it's revealed that the Emperor's soul split into 2 halves, one descending into hell, the other ascending into the heavens. Becoming a god twice is impressive for anyone, however, it doesn't last. After promising eternal life to the party, the Emperor's intentions are made clear once again, and is defeated in both his heavenly form by Minwu and hellish form by Firion. The Emperor is the perfect example that evil will always be shown for what it truly is, and the forces of good will destroy it. Zemus takes over the god complex for Final Fantasy IV and does it in multiple forms as well. A Lunarian, or a humanoid race hailing from the moon, Zemus wishes to destroy all humans and use his mind control powers to that end. Residing on the Red Moon, he sees Earthlings as insects and wishes to give the Lunarians the planet he believes they rightfully deserve. Mind-controlling Golbez and Kain Highwind, Zemus is mostly behind the scenes for much of the game. When he is confronted, his first form is defeated, but once again we find a villain that refuses to die. His overwhelming hatred manifests as Zeromus, his most powerful form. He is defeated by Cecil and friends, but makes a chilling remark before disappearing: "I will never die as long as there is darkness in the hearts of man." To me, this is a message for the player and the party. Zeromus was the embodiment of hatred and darkness, and as long as there is hatred and darkness in the hearts of man, his influence on this world can be felt. He may not exist in a physical form, but his lasting mark on the world remains. We could also say that the darkness can be cast out of people's hearts, as we saw Cecil do the same when he went from a dark knight to a paladin. Final Fantasy V features another villain that is the embodiment of pure evil and hatred. Needing to find a way to purge their land of evil and corruption, the people of Final Fantasy V created the Forest of More. Sealing away all of the evil souls into a single tree, the evil manifested itself into a humanoid form, becoming the villain Exdeath. Exdeath is incapable of understanding human emotions, and it shows in his dealings with even his own minions. He's also very arrogant and believes that no one has the power to stand against him. In true god complex fashion, he builds a fortress which becomes a base of operations for his destructive nature. However, what separates him from other villains is that he takes no issue with himself dying, as that's all part of the plan of returning everything to the Void. If he dies knowing that everything will eventually return to the Void anyway. That makes him even more dangerous because he knows he has nothing to lose. Everything Exdeath does is to further his one and only goal. After being defeated by Bartz, he is swallowed by the Void and becomes Neo-Exdeath. As Neo-Exdeath, he will go to any lengths to achieve the goal of erasing existence. It would appear that he wishes to be the god of death itself. While Exdeath wasn't human, his being was formed by the evil in the souls of man, and for that, his existence is one of human nature. While many villains in this video are powerful warriors or beings, not every villain who believes they are a god started out the strongest warrior of a kingdom or the ruler of one. Sporting his signature laugh and court jester appearance, the Clown Prince of Destruction Kefka Palazzo is one of the most iconic like villains in the franchise. He's also a master manipulator, but one that is not afraid to get his own hands dirty to achieve his goals. Kefka was the original experiment for the Magitech Knights, which granted him magical powers. Because of the primitive nature of the experiments and its lack of perfection, he suffers a psychotic break in the process. He loses all regard for human life, craving only to destroy and kill. It's with these goals in mind that Kefka descends into madness and strives to become a god. He feels he is more than human, and that all will bow down to him as the ultimate being in the universe. However, Kefka is different from most villains in the franchise, and it shows in his personality and his actions. While most manipulators in the series choose to be behind the scenes, Kefka chooses to take things into his own hands, and the party must fight him several times throughout the game. He travels the world in search of ways to receive more power, all while manipulating the Emperor. He uses his power as the Emperor's right-hand man to achieve his goals, and swiftly dispatches anyone who attempts to get in his way. No one is safe from Kefka's wrath, not even the Emperor. His destructive nature can be seen in several scenes, mind-controlling Terra into killing several of his own soldiers, the siege of Figaro Castle, the poisoning of Doma, and the elimination of the Espers are all just a few examples of Kefka's ruthless actions. After absorbing the Espers, the final step in his transition into godhood came when he unlocked the powers of the Warring Triad, 3 goddess statues of immense power. He becomes a god and succeeds in his goal of death and destruction. He destroys the world in powerful beams of light, leaving it in ruins. The party must reunite and battle through a horrific tower designed straight from the mind of Kefka himself. Once at the top of Kefka's tower, the god himself awaits. After a long and difficult battle, he is defeated by the party and disintegrates into nothing. This proves that once again, even gods are capable of suffering defeat. However, Kefka is the most successful at accomplishing his goals, as not many villains can say they've destroyed the world. His defeat at the hands of the player has multiple effects. Due to becoming the god of all magic, magic disappears from the world again and the world returns to its former state. Final Fantasy VII saw one of the most tragic villains in video game history, and one that developed a god complex in the later parts of his life. Once the highest ranking member of the soldier program, Sephiroth wasn't always the murderous and vengeful being we see in the original game. Prior to this, he was known to show compassion towards his friends, Angeal and Genesis. However, after the Nibelheim reactor incident, he slips into insanity and completely disregards human life. Discovering that his creation was nothing more than a science experiment, he falsely believes that the alien Jenova is his real mother. Realizing his entire life was a lie to further Shinra's goals, he burns the village of Nibelheim to the ground, setting in motion the events of the rest of the game. Sephiroth releases Jenova from her chamber in the Nibelheim reactor, and plans to take over the world with her. He claims to be the chosen one, and the person destined to lead the planet. This overinflated sense of self really defines Sephiroth after the reactor incident. His belief that he is the chosen one gives him a strong will to succeed at becoming the new god of Gaia. He sets in motion a plan to wound the planet, using the Black Materia meteor, and merge himself with the Lifestream to become a god. He succeeds in summoning Meteor after manipulating Cloud into giving him the Black Materia. He uses his newly acquired control over Jenova to kill the one person that can stop his plans for world domination. Aerith unfortunately meets her untimely demise at the hands of Jenova, who appears in Sephiroth's image. This gives the player one more reason to seek Sephiroth out and put an end to his reign of terror. The party chases him all over the world, culminating in the final battle in the Northern Crater. His final battle is one that takes on several forms, one form having the appearance of an angelic godlike being known as Safer Sephiroth. This further accents his god complex, projecting his image in the way that he views himself, a being without limits, a deity, and a god. His ability Supernova also shows his godlike power as it destroys several planets on the way to hitting the player for massive damage. He is ultimately reduced back to his human form and is finally defeated by Cloud. This is one of the few times that we see a villain gain such power and then end up reverting back to a human form. It really brought Sephiroth's human side back into focus, showing that even the mightiest of gods were once human like the rest of us. He makes a short return in Advent Children, where his remnant reunites with Jenova and Sephiroth is reborn. He's once again defeated by Cloud and returns to the Lifestream. Sephiroth's human nature and his unfortunate manipulation by Shinra make him one of the most relatable villains and one of the best in the franchise. He's a huge fan favorite and tops several lists of the greatest video game villains of all time. It will be interesting to see how his character is handled in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Ultimecia is an interesting villain. While not much backstory is provided for her motives, we do know that she wishes to rule over time and space. In her Daling City speech, she alludes to having been persecuted for being a sorceress. This causes her to hate all existence and wants to rule over every era of time. Using her possession powers to control a sorceress of the past, her entire goal is to merge all eras of time into one compressed time. She also wishes to use this opportunity to wipe the Seed military unit out of existence. This is due to her prophesied death at the hands of Seed. Over the course of the game, she possesses several characters and the goal of using them to launch time compression. At one time, she possesses Adia, Adele, and Renoa. All three are eventually freed or defeated, but not before time compression is used. However, Ultimecia's own spell is used against her, as Squall and friends use it to access her castle. Once there, the Seeds fight her in her many forms. When they arrive in her throne room, she sits on a pedestal-like throne. This could symbolize her thoughts that she is above humans and wishes to rule them from above, much like a goddess. At one point during the battle, she draws the Guardian Force Griever from Squall. It is stated that because that is the image that Squall sees as strength, Ultimecia was able to draw it from him. She even junctions herself to Griever, taking on a powerfully monstrous form. She eventually shows her true form, which is a faceless abomination, but is ultimately defeated. However, Ultimecia is part of a self-fulfilling prophecy. After her defeat at the hands of the player, she can't die without passing on her powers. She ends up back in the orphanage, where she passes on her powers to Adia Kramer. This sets in motion the events of the game, and gives Adia and Sid the idea to form Seed. This cycle of events dooms Ultimecia to the fate she was trying to avoid, being defeated by Squall, the Seed of Destiny. Final Fantasy IX featured multiple villains, but none more memorable than Kuja. Being a creation by the android Garland, Kuja was created with one purpose: become the Angel of Death, end all life on Gaia, and allow the once living souls of Terra a vessel to be reborn in. It's with this goal in mind that he manipulates Queen Braun and her massive amount of power over the world. He uses her massive military might to destroy all those that oppose him, and uses her to further his goals of ultimate destruction. His love for the rich lifestyle and thoughts of being on a higher plane of existence do make themselves evident throughout the game. Kuja sees himself as the ultimate power and will do whatever it takes for that to remain the case. He spends some time attempting to figure out the powerful trance state, and after absorbing the souls he's collected using his airship, is able to utilize it and gain even greater power. While very prideful and egotistical, Kuja is a victim of his own nature. After disposing of his master Garland, he discovers that he is actually mortal and that his life is destined to come to an end. This makes Kuja a tragic villain. Everyone in this world at some point or another has questioned their purpose, and Kuja is no different. He despises the black mages he created, but relates to them as he too questions his own purpose. Even though most of the game is spent hating him, by the end of it you can't help but feel at least a little sorry for him. Having never experienced childhood, he was never able to learn empathy for others. It can also be seen that he grows as a person and regrets the actions he's taken. Despite all the pain and suffering he's caused, he used his last amount of power to teleport Zidane's friends to safety. His last moments are spent with his created brother, as the two are enveloped by branches and roots. Sometimes even the most evil of villains can show remorse and compassion. Next up on the list, Seymour Guado. Seymour was born as a half-human, half-Guado hybrid. His father Jiskel was the Guado Maester, or religious leader. It is later revealed that to accomplish his goals and become a leader of Yevon, he must do the unthinkable. He murders his own father and inherits his seat as the Guado Maester. From a very young age, he wished to defeat Sin, a whale-like monster that creates destruction all over the world of Spira. As a young boy, his mother sacrifices herself to become the Aeon Anima. It is her hope that her son would use that power to destroy Sin and bring peace to himself. However, with the loss of his mother and his insatiable thirst for power, he became twisted and his ideals shifted. His plan would be to not only defeat Sin, but he would become Sin and destroy the world. Seymour believed this would relieve the world and everyone in it of its pain. To enable this plot, he needed the help of the Yevon religion, specifically a summoner. To become Sin, one must become the final summoning for a summoner that has finished their pilgrimage. To do so, you must share an extreme bond with that person, such as a friend or lover. Seymour plots to marry Lady Yuna and become her final summoning. The party soon realizes this and defeats him in the Macalania temple. However, this is not the end of Seymour. Becoming an unsent, or person who's moved to the far plane, is halted by their extreme connection to the world, he continues his plans. Appearing 3 more times in horrific forms, he won't let death stop him from achieving his goals. Seymour is the perfect example of someone who achieves great power and then becomes tainted by it. While his mother's intentions were noble at heart, the old saying comes into play: the road to hell is paved with good intentions. No villain is more representative of that than Seymour Guado. He believes himself to be above mere mortals and states that opinion throughout the game. He also believes that his cause is a noble one and that the people should thank him for his dedication to it. You spend much of the game hating him for his actions, but it's not until you reach his mother's faith that you realize the suffering he's been through. Because of his pain and suffering, he wishes to relieve Spira of that feeling. His mother asks the player to do something for her. Use her power to defeat Sin, and with Sin, her son's obsession with it. Going so far as to even enter Sin to attempt to stop the party, Seymour is finally defeated. In a chilling moment, Yuna finally sends him to the far plane where his soul can now be at peace, relieving him of his pain and suffering. Next up is Vayne Solidor. Vayne is the next in line emperor of the Arcadian Empire. A master strategist with a manipulative nature, Vayne is ruthless when trying to achieve his goals. He has a deep obsession with gaining more power and wants to become the new Dynast King, or ruler of man. His overall goal is to break the control that the gods of Ivalice have over the history of man. However, this goal isn't as noble as it appears. He wants to use this newly found freedom to rule over man himself and ascend to a godlike status. Vayne joins forces with a fallen god known as Venat. Venat and Vayne share the common goal of breaking the control of the gods. He will rule, and no one, not even his own family, will get in the way. He murders his own father in cold blood and ascends to the role of emperor himself. He consistently uses his military might to get the things he wants. However, every dictator has those below them that slowly realize the evil their masters are capable of. Judge Brandt, the most decorated judge of the Arcadian Empire, turns on his master after a heart-to-heart with his twin brother Bosch. He is struck down after striking Vayne and dies of his wounds later. After Vayne is mortally wounded by Vaughn, Vayne gives his life to give Vayne his power. He does this to thank him for breaking the control of the gods. Vayne becomes a dragon-like creature, fusing with parts of his airship Bahamut. After a long and difficult battle, the party strikes him down. He is reduced to mist and leaves the world of ffxiii forever. It cost him his life, but the result wasn't all that bad. Man would now have control over his own destiny, and in the end, that gives the future generations hope. Even though his intentions were for self-empowerment, Vayne Solidor's actions caused the future of ffxiii in some way to be better. It's hard to believe a villain such as Vayne can have such a positive impact on the future of mankind. Our final villain on the list, Barth Andalus. While we originally see him as his human form, Gallant, the main antagonist of Final Fantasy XIII has nefarious plans up his sleeve. Being a part of the ffxiii race, or Final Fantasy XIII's version of godlike beings, he plans to destroy the world of Cocoon. He sees humans as tools and just a means to his evil end. His overall goal is to bring the ffxiii's maker back into the world so that the world can be reborn. To do this, he believes that a massive sacrifice of human lives is necessary to open up a portal to his maker. This is where his plans to destroy Cocoon begin centuries before the game takes place. His plan was to get as many people as possible into Cocoon and then sacrifice them all for the purpose of opening the portal. To do so, he would need to convince people that Cocoon was a paradise so that they would follow him there. Once he had enough people for the sacrifice, he would drop the world of Cocoon onto Grand Pulse with the hopes that it would be enough to bring his maker back. Much like many master manipulators, Barth Andalus disguises himself for much of the game and hides his true nature. Becoming the leader of the governing body of Cocoon, he deceives his followers into believing he's a kind and passionate leader. However, this is all a facade for what truly lies beneath. His plans are to destroy Orphan, the ffxiii that holds up Cocoon and saves it from being destroyed. He wishes to use the ffxiii, or humans branded by the Divine and given special tasks to complete this goal. However, the party of heroes rejects that focus and wishes to find a way to end the cycle and save the people they love. Barth Andalus is defeated by lightning in the gang, and his plans are never realized as Vanille and Fang summon Ragnarok, saving the people of Cocoon. Sometimes villains appear as the ultimate evil, and sometimes they appear as friends. The lesson to learn here is to not just take people at face value. That just because a person appears good on the surface, they may be hiding a dark secret. Even religious leaders and dignitaries can have evil intentions. You could also say that not every villain was always evil. There are villains who suffered a very traumatic experience and are driven to evil through forces out of their control. Whether by brute force, cunning wit, or pure manipulation, each of these villains brought something special to their respective games. The reason these villains were so memorable is because they've left a lasting impression on gamers for over 30 years, and let's hope they continue to do so each and every installment in the future. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to omni-slash that like button. Let me know in the comments section below if you have a new outlook on some of these villains. Subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell to join the ranks of Soldier today. And for all the latest Final Fantasy content, I'm Soldier First Class, and I'm on to the next mission. Later, guys.